I remember when I did my MA, and it was 27 months long, and at month 23, the tutor looked at myself and another of the students and said, "You two stop sampling, start making, yeah, or else you're having nothing for your graduation show," sort of thing. And it's kind of like, oh, okay. And I think there are those of us who love to sample, love to try new materials, try new techniques, and to see how that sits with us. And then I can remember doing my MA, and for 3 months I was timetabled to make these felt pieces that I was shaping on mannequins. And for every one I did, I bled and I took my skin away, and I had to grow my skin for 3 days to be able to make the next one. Um, and so in between, I had to go, okay, in order to have a felt ready for the next shaping, I have to stitch on it, I have to do this and this and this. And I had a work schedule, that I had to stick to, and that's being professional. It's showing up every day and doing it. And I was bored. I got so bored in that regime of doing it, but I turned up and I produced an amazing, incredible installation. But yeah, what excites me is that learning something new. But sometimes we have to sort of go, and now we have to make something. We have to
Right.
push
Yeah.
through. Otherwise, we're just going to leave a shed load of samples and nothing finished. They don't have to be big. They don't have to be big
No.
pieces, but to actually resolve and take ideas through and finish them, really, really important.
And it's interesting you should mention professionalism and so forth, because I mean, that's a topic that we've been talking about within the fellowship process.
Mm,
Um, and, the mindset you have to have for that.
mm,
To be honest, I think the mindset perhaps comes first. I don't know. But once I decided that I was an artist, I actually haven't looked back. So, being an artist and stepping into that mold, I found that my professionalism has walked alongside me
mm,
and occurred naturally.
mm.
So, when you think about and you're talking to your students about their mindset, I suppose it depends what their goal or their what outcome do they want by
Mm,
coming to Artybird Carnforth and working with you.
mm.
What do you think they want in general?
I think there are several things that people come here for. Some come for relaxation, for their hobby, to be able to embrace that creative self. That maybe they're working in a different way in the rest of their life, and it's their time to come and to be. And others come very much because of that drive to be creative, and therefore they want to be the best creative they can be. And some are coming for career, and it might be that they're seeing at the end of it they will have a new career, or they're already aligned with that career and they're wanting to develop along the way. And I think that Artybird embraces everybody. And although in my own work, it tends to be on the aesthetic fine art side, we do have people who are following sort of the design brief, making, knowing what that end product is and making towards it. And so, there are a whole array of ways in which we can make work and which work for individuals. And I think that's really, really important. But I think, be the change you want to see, that mindset of, I'm a professional, I'm going to show up, I'm going to have a go at everything is just really, really important. And you know, I remember I had a lovely professor when I did my degree, Professor Burnip, and he used to say, and I did a degree in weaving, training to go into industry. And we were all sitting there, young fledgling designers, you know, all of us thinking we're going to be the next great, you know, whatever. And he goes, what's good design? And we're all going, oh, it's the colors, it's the this, it's the that, it's the other. He said, good design sells. And we sat there and he went, J-cloth. I mean, this was the 1980s and J-cloth had taken over. I don't know if you have J-cloths in Australia.
No, I'm not sure what J-cloth is.
It's a disposable cloth that you buy.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we call it chucks here. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
chucks. And basically they're taking the idea of the rag that you would use your old cloth up, but they put holes in it. And he used to laugh and sort of go, you know, they put holes in the cloth, they're selling air, you know, and things. And it was just sort of like, and all of us went deflated. And it was kind of like, oh, we're to design disposable cloths sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it is a mindset that, you know, if you're in industry, you know, you and I did a year in industry, and I was designing fabrics for M&S and Next and Jaeger and Jean Muir and all the rest of it. And we had to design the fabrics they wanted, that they wanted on the high street. There was no room for sitting and painting and drawing and having a whole design thing. In actual fact, it was people in the pattern room and things that came up with the design concepts of marketing and the story behind the marketing, as opposed to the fabric makers. We didn't have that going on. So, you know, you kind of look at that and go, if you're professional, you've got to make money at it. Well, you know, it's so hard within the arts to make money at it.
That's I do agree with, if you're professional, that you're really aiming is to make money out of it. But what you're describing from my perspective is something similar to the Industrial Revolution, where it's still a manufacturing industry.
Yeah.
And which I think in Australia we've kind of, well, although manufacturing is done offshore, as we found with COVID-19, we actually import most of our stuff, and when we don't make it ourselves, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't think it's a dirty word, though, to be professional and to sell and to make your work and to make some money out of it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I love selling my work, because in a way then I'm sharing the joy that I've put into it. I mean, I love the you know, the cash, but I also like the feedback that says, I really love this piece, I want to buy it. And I get as much thrill out as that as I do about, you know, hoarding it up and putting it in a cupboard somewhere and no one ever sees it again.
Yeah.
I mean, do you sell much of your work as your own personal artistic work?
Some, not masses. What I find is I make so little because I'm time poor, and it's so personal. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to let it go, because it's become like my visual diary. It's, you know, so it just becomes part of my collection. So, I mean, it's a really interesting one, because I don't see myself as less professional because I don't sell, because I have that mindset to keep showing up and to keep making and creating. And I think it's wonderful. Liz Gilbert's talking about this a lot in her talks that she does. She's done a TED talk and an opera talk and all sorts of things. And do look up Elizabeth Gilbert's talks on creativity. But she talks a lot about, you know, an awful lot of creatives do not make their living. That is the roof over their head, the clothes on their back, the food in their belly, from their art. They have to do another job, and then in the evenings, on the weekends, you are being creative, and. aiming to keep moving forward with that creativity. And we've seen that. You've mentioned COVID, and we had a government poster over here looking at trying to get artists to retrain, and they used a stock photo of a ballerina and said, this ballerina, could be in tech, retrain and work in tech. And you're looking at this body that has trained for a lifetime to be able to, and I mean, the government took it down within a day because of the public outcry, because the public understand that passion, that drive that keeps artists going. But also in terms of government funding, I mean, they announced yesterday that there is funding going into the arts and opening up the theatres again and things, but the artists haven't been included in the furlough schemes, and it's just kind of like, they know we will carry on making art because we have to. It's who we are, whether we're given money or not. So and the arts are what have kept people's spirits up. We have been all over the internet as musicians, as actors, as dancers, as craft people, as fine artists. We've had exhibitions, we've had all sorts of things. And and the feedback is that we have kept the nation's spirits up there. So
very much the same here too.
Yeah. And so I think there needs to be a conversation about professionalism, the arts, and the money side of it. Because, then I could work for free. Everybody turns up to the artist and goes, can you just do a workshop? Can you just do this? Can you just do that? And there's no money to pay us to do that. And it's just not seen from the outside as a profession. It's seen more as a vocation. That's not really the word I'm looking for. It's seen as a lifestyle, almost that bohemian lifestyle, and therefore we're living the life we want to live. But if we just lived the bohemian lifestyle, we wouldn't be making art. We have to keep turning up to make the art and to do that. So there needs to be, if the public want to buy our work, that's fantastic, but they have to pay a realistic price for it. And to understand that what you are doing it's not an hourly rate. It's not a,
No.
and if you paid an hourly rate, it's, what you are buying is this amazing item, this amazing work of art. And to make the arts sustainable, we do have to pay in some way, whether the state pays it, whether it's paid for by people doing. But I know, half my time is spent promoting Artybird, promoting my art. And if you're spending half your time applying for grants, Facebook, social media, filming, connecting with people, then you're not making your art. And it's kind of, well, do you pay somebody else to market you? We do. Yeah. And and that is it gives us time.
Big relief.
Yeah.
Because I think to be visible, I think I heard someone say, to be visible, you've got to actually be doing that sort of thing in whatever form will work for you. But if you want to just be inside your studio, being invisible, just doing your work and no one ever sees it, it's a bit like, if the tree falls but nobody hears it, did it actually exist, sort of thing.
Yeah. And different people will find their place within that. And I think there's absolute space for the people who just make their work quietly on their own. And that's giving them joy. I hope their families are seeing and they're sharing it with their friends, so that they're sharing that joy, because that's the thing that I've learned about showing my work, is that heart-to-heart connection that you have with the viewer.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking back to, do you remember when we went to the gallery in Melbourne?
Oh,
And
I do. Absolutely.
and
And John,
John,
my favorite hero now. Oh, I
I
just love
know,
him. He's
I
informed all my work since then.
I
He's,
know,
he's you know,
just amazing the way the scale of his work, the
mm,
immediacy of his mark making, um, almost the lack of presentation. They were just stuck on the wall, but they kind of surrounded you,
yeah,
and um, and and he had those expressive marks, which, you know, since coming back, I've watched videos of him going in the creek and coming out and throwing his body on the paper, and making the marks with the mud with his body as opposed to with a brush. But then he has those incredible watercolor skills where he is able to bring that in. And I think it's the different ways he tells the narrative of the Australian landscape, through the expressive, but also through the pattern, you know, and he will have small patterns included within these big pieces where he is, um, bringing his experience of landscape down to this beautiful, beautiful thing. And then he'll go back out again, and it's the birds, crossing the
mm,
landscape, and the scale is, I mean, I was with you, and you're in quite a similar climate to me in terms of growth and
yeah,
that temperate. You know, I've not been to the really hot Australia, and
yeah,
you know, where it's not built up, and you just have these huge expanses of space. Um, but you kind of just feel kind of absorbed in all of that, and it, like you, it's, and I kind of sort of been looking at him and looking at, you know, what would I take from him? And in one sense, it's everything I've just spoken about. But when I tried to juxtapose the sort of detail with that, it was manufactured. And
yeah,
it wasn't until I started to layer it that it started to resonate for me. So it was actually when I started to look at Julie Moretto's work and that abstract narrative and that layering and that building, that the relevance of John Wools's work in my life became resonant. And that was only last year.
mm.
And I worked on a piece, I've got it here.
I
Um,
think that's one of the things I really like about working with you, Kate, is the fact that, you do offer all that exposure to different artists,
mm,
and not to actually, you know, copy that artist, but to
mm.
look at why and how they do something, and then think, well, how does that apply to what I do?
I think that's
And,
just
and
really, really important.
yeah, you really allow that opportunity to occur,
Yeah,
for your students and stuff. And, you obviously do it for your own work as well.
yeah, and it's, nobody is going to be somebody else.
No.
Yeah, and we can't be. So you know, if I mean, I try and work with makers every year. You know, I try and go and find a professional master in their area and work with them. And if I go and do a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day workshop with them, I go and do that workshop. I go and I steep myself in that workshop. And then afterwards, I will come back and go, right, what 3 things am I taking into my own work?
Mm.
Because there's a real temptation to go down the rabbit warren of, I'm going to be them, you know. Well, no, they're them. You know, and it might be a technique, it might be a way of looking, it might be, you know, all sorts of things. But that's kind of what I try and do, is to expose my students to the work of other makers, and artists and craftspeople,
Yeah.
you know, the whole gamut. And you know, I'm always looking at journals and reading and things like that too. But I think it's just so important to look at trying to get inside the artist's head, how
Mm.
they're doing it, but different ways of looking, because you know, you can be caught up in this white male Western European viewpoint, which,
Yeah.
you know, is there, but it's not the only way of looking. Um, and you know, one of the things that I came to Australia and said to you, I'd like to see some Aboriginal artwork.
Mm.
I'd never seen any in real life. I'd
Yeah.
seen images of it, but it so touched my heart. It so touched my life that I just really, really, really wanted to go and look. And we went to see the Indigenous.
I thought it was really interesting that when we went to the art gallery to see, you know, the Aboriginal art, but we also saw John Woolsey. But you know, the most interesting thing for me was to be at that point. I don't think I'd ever been to an art gallery except to just walk around and think and be a pose. And it was absolutely fascinating to watch you as a real artist, as I saw you and as I see you, to sit there. You know, we're on this big cushion, and I tell the story that you got Robin got you the little artist chair, got one, and Aidan went off with his book to look at other things, and I sat on this big chair just watching and thinking. I had to sleep because you know it was a long time, and then I started to watch people look at the things, and then I watched you what you were doing and stuff like that. It was absolutely amazing to you know to have that experience with you. I wish all your students could have that experience with you. It was really amazing. And now and I've gone now several times to the art gallery, always with you in mind. Um, and that experience was invaluable for me. But it was just wonderful to see you as an artist to engage with the art that was there. It didn't really matter what it was, but I know we were looking at some Indigenous pieces,
Mm.
and you know it was even though they were flat on the wall, and it's really interesting because generally it's made to be seen flat.
Yeah, and that was the realization I received in that gallery.
Yeah,
It's something I've come back with, and I do wonder if that is why it resonates so much for me, because I was diagnosed 30 years ago with ME, and one of the things it affects, I have inflammation within this part, the tubes, and it affects my balance. So when I'm walking, I have to look downwards, and I have to walk looking down, not looking sideways. So that language of the path that I tread and looking downwards became so important to me. And
there'd be a
I
real resonance there.
Yeah, and at first, because I thought, right, how do I start this? And I thought, right, stones and pebbles, you know,
Mm.
things that I love, that, you know, the treasures that, you know, let's start drawing those. And I started off drawing these pebble shapes and things, and they just look like Barbara Hepworth sculptures, you know, even though, you know, and it wasn't until I started to kind of extend beyond the pebble and expand, that I could actually start to flatten that visual language that I'd grown up with, which, you know, and it's the way I read things. So it became kind of important to me to look at how I could flatten so that it would resonate that way rather than
Yeah.
that. That was in alpaca, and I've got a printed one that was a direct response to the gallery visit.
Yes, I remember that one. Yep.
And this incorporated the stitch and the print and the alpaca, and looking at those artworks that I'd seen there. But what I ended up doing was working from, in actual fact, the ice outside of the building here. And we have areas where we get puddles, deep puddles when it rains. And these puddles froze. And the first winter we were here, I'd actually lost one of my students. She disappeared. And I eventually found her outside taking photographs of these pebbles stuck in the ice, trapped. And normally I can't go out because I can't balance. I can't actually leave the building. So when we have bad winters, when it's slippery and icy, I am trapped and trapped in the home. So it was amazing that these blocks of ice were just in the puddles. So I could actually walk on non-slippery areas to get to these areas. So I joined Becky. I was there photographing, and taking these photos. And I think eventually the whole class were outside just taking photos of these. And it became a whole series called Trapped, where I've been looking at the stones and the pebbles, and how things are trapped. It's been kind of interesting to look and explore them within the felt, within the stitching that I do, working with the naturals. This is now ready to have some colour applied using natural dyes. It's been mordanted. So that's ready to go, as is this one. But what I've learned doing it is that it's only slippery here 2 or 3 days a year. And how big this comes in my mind, and actually, that story. So working through this series has actually allowed me to kind of really look at actually the beauty in the ice, that I'm not trapped, that I can use that pause and that stillness of not being able to leave the house to be able to make art, but it's also given me opportunities to open up conversations with other people about their lives, and my disability is hidden, and many people live with a hidden disability, but there are people who have visible disabilities as well. And I've been able to have conversations where people go, oh yeah, it's a horrible feeling, isn't it, that feeling trapped when it's icy, when it's this, when it's that. And it just, using my creativity to be able to open up a conversation.
But that's what art is. It's a channel, isn't it? It can open up all these opportunities to think about this. I remember us talking about when Brexit was first coming. In fact, that blue piece is my response to our conversation. And I remember challenging you to, well, you do, as an artist, you do have a voice. You're just not voiceless, but not all people may hear it, but you do have a voice as an artist.
Yeah.
And you came up with another series, if I remember correctly.
These, and they're called Never Spilling a Drop. And you challenged me. You'd never seen me so low. So no hope. I was hopeless.
It was, it was I've never forgotten that.
And your response to, hang on, you're my mentor. How how do I have you as my mentor if this is how you are? And you turn around and said, I'm going to say,
I didn't quite say that, I'm sure.
No, but implied. But you did turn around and go, if this was the other way around, you'd be saying to me, turn this energy, this inward energy outward, and make a work of art. by next Friday, I want you to show me it next Friday, because we talk every Friday.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of like, oh, okay, I'm teaching that, but yeah, okay, I'm going to do this. And I had actually been working with a group, and we'd been looking at water, and we had been drawing water. And what you realize is that you don't draw water, you draw
No.
the thing that is in it, surrounds it, on it, uh, and it tells the story of its environment.
Yeah.
And it made me think of, because I practice Buddhism, Buddhism of Nichiren Daishonin, and we have a concept called dependent origination, which is that when we don't exist on our own, as we're dependent on our environment, on the people, on the places. And one analogy that's used to describe this is the ocean. And that, each of us are individuals and drops, and we are individuals and drops, but together we form an ocean, and some of those are very, very deep in the bottom of the ocean with the eddies and the flows, and others are waves at the top and doing this, and but together we make this pattern. And because I'd been drawing the water and I'd had the conversation with you, it brought up that for me, and that what I really, really wanted was for us to start to move together again. It felt as though the pain of the nation split in half was just extraordinary. And so it became my prayer, and it's still my prayer, and it's called Never Spilling a Drop. And it is that every individual life, and I include in that all animals, all plants, the planet, every life is respected and is equal. So I took these 4 little drawings that I'd done, and I put them into the computer and I worked on them, and they were only teeny tiny drawings, and I created a montage of all these. Some are similar because some of us think the same, but we're still individual. Some are completely different, but it just became a focus for that coming together, and that unity and feeling united, and moving, still absolutely respecting everybody's individuality, but also completely respecting the collectiveness, and for people to realize their responsibility within that collectiveness, that we have the government we deserve, we have, and not to go, you voted for it, I didn't. No, it's a collective, it's that dependent origination, that we are together. And my colleague that I work with, Kate Ryan, she said, I'd love to see those little things big. So we went big, and now these have sold, interestingly,
There you go. So it's interesting that art can tell the story as well as, it's your story, your pain, and how you felt, but obviously it resonated well with others, that they did want to buy their own copy. I love my copy of your work.
And also what's been wonderful is, I don't declare how I voted in the referendum. I just put that story out there. And both Remainers and Believers have looked at it, and both sort of see, oh, that's the seeds of newness. Oh, that's the, and, and so it's speaking to everybody, which, and there's not a lot at the moment that speaks to everybody in our nation at the moment.
And that's a great piece of art, isn't it? When the audience can build their own story, their own responses to that piece, and you as the artist allow them, enable them, empower them to do that. I think that's a great gift. I mean, when you look at what your passions are, and you said, you know, you don't like to sell your work or anything like that, but, you know, you look how powerful art can be
Mm.
in terms of even, you know, very realistic, very tough, very, you know, divisive times. Art can actually be something that brings us together.
Mm.
So, you know, when you think about how art is taught, how we develop our artistic and creative talents, you know, it's how do you see that happening in the world? I mean, because you do a lot of time helping others to reach their goal, and as you've said, often at the cost of your own time to do your own work.
Mm.
But it's one of your equal passions is to help people bring theirs forward.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really important to me, and that's that kind of eternal thing that I can give, that, you know, when I'm long gone, there will be people I've taught who are making, and equally they will teach, and that will go on. I think with textiles, that's been relied upon, that we learnt with our grandparents, we learnt with our mothers. I was so lucky. I had incredible textile education at school. And at the age of 13, we all learned to spin a thread. We all learned to weave fabric. I also had an amazing textile teacher who showed me contemporary textile art. And I was actually corresponding with her at Christmas and saying, you know, that first lesson with her where she showed us a slideshow of you know, and I'm talking contemporary in the 1970s, but up until then, it had all been kind of home education, make the apron, make this, make that, which gave me great skills. And I still have a passion for those traditions. And, you know, you'll see in here the insertion stitches and things that, you know, come from there. But it was this contemporary approach that Kate Cardwell gave me. And you know, so I was so lucky, and I could do A level, you know, spinning, weaving, A level textile art, A level, you know, and it was so lucky. And now we have barely any textiles in school. It's very few and far between, where people can actually, and that's been going on now for decades.
mm,
So the young people now are not getting the opportunity to even learn it from their mothers, because it's not being taught, and it's being seen as something that doesn't need to be taught. But then where does the respect for cloth, for clothing and things come from? You know, I saw somebody being interviewed on Breakfast TV who threw garments away when a button came off because she thought it
mm,
was broken. She didn't realize she could actually sew it back on again. And, you know, on Sewing Bee, we've just had it said, you know, with the 6 generations of clothing on this planet right now. So if we haven't got that respect for fabric, how it is made, how it is constructed, if we don't have that understanding actually of different fibers, and, you know, and the fact that things like acrylic, polyester, nylon are plastic, you know, and, you know, this nation, this planet is being covered in a layer of plastic. They're finding it in the air now. You know, it's everywhere. So we need to be working with wool, with linen, with hemp. Cotton is great in the countries where it naturally grows, but it's become a world industry
not
that has,
necessarily in the middle of Australia with no water.
yeah, you know,
Mm,
and it's taking the water away. Um,
mm,
so these are conversations we have to have, and we have to have them now, or else we're just not going to have a planet. And so from that point of view, textiles needs to be taught in school. But also from just a pleasure, you know, and that creative urge to teach creativity. I actually believe we should be teaching drawing in the way that we teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's a skill that teaches us to look. It's a skill that teaches us to communicate. It's a skill that teaches us to express, you know. And I have a student who became a scientist because in primary school, they went out on the nature trail every Thursday morning, picked something, came back and drew it. And by drawing it, she learned to understand how things worked, how things grew, you know, and she got a passion for science through that. And, you know, I've a student who's a doctor, and if she couldn't draw, she couldn't have shown people quickly how to do an operation. She, you know, she could draw what they were supposed to do, and she could teach them how to do it. So these are skills that everybody needs. And yeah, and I know, you know, that there are people who've been brought up being told they're rubbish at art, and therefore they don't have the skill, they don't feel they have the
There's
skills.
lots of stories about those,
Yeah,
aren't there?
and it's still going on. My son was told he was rubbish at art when, you know, when he was 11. So it's not something that's back there. It's what I hear over and over again as I teach people to draw, and people cry because for 50 years they haven't drawn, and now they know they can. And so, you know, I would love to work with people to teach, give them the skills to be able to teach the kids to draw, because the kids know how to draw. You just need to know how to, like the blue text paper, and stand well back and not shut it down, but open it up. And I just feel passionately that, you know, that this is a skill that everybody needs. And that, and the textiles. And, you know, I've had students come who are on degree courses in textiles and then not being taught the skills because the technicians have lost their jobs in the cutbacks and things. So the people who taught the skills are no longer there. So they come to me to learn the skills, to be able to go back to the degree and use them. And it is so, so important to have that design where you can find out what you want to say through your work and how to say it. You've got the skills, which is how do you say it? How do you learn the materials, the tools, the techniques, and hone those skills? And then you've got the making and turning that into finished products, whether they're functional or aesthetic, and anywhere on that sliding scale. And I think that that's what City and Guilds brings.